Okay, let's go on with our midweek meeting audit for the 13th of the 1st, 2020.
Yet it makes great brags. See how small a fire it takes to set a great forest ablaze. Lying is like spitting fire out of your mouth. In fact,
well, who is the biggest organization in religion on the planet for lying? The Jehovah Witnesses. Oh my goodness. We need to look in a new window. Let's just put in, for those that aren't aware of this, JW Lies, or we could put in Watchtower Lies. It doesn't really matter. You'll find hundreds of videos. Why don't we play this one of the Australian Royal Commission, where Mr. Sphinx and Mr. what's his name, the other bloke? I'll go back to the start.
Situation where someone
and Mr. O'Brien
has disassociated.
Talk about shunning and the lies that come out of their mouths. Let's just see how this goes, viewers.
Situation where someone has disassociated because they're a victim of child sexual abuse. But we just wanted to make that point again.
I think the real issue is that for some people, the circumstances will be such that they just can't stay, and they will find it necessary for their own survival, effectively, to disassociate. But the consequence of that is they are shunned and lose all of their prior social structure. That's the issue. And you heard the evidence that some people gave about that issue. That's the problem.
If I could, Your Honour, with respect...
That doesn't happen in other parts of society, generally.
Again, Your Honour, with respect, and I certainly don't want to be protesting a point...
Say what you believe to be true.
Thank you for that. The Commission has consistently, and we respect the right of the Commission to draw the conclusions and counsel assisting, but the Commission has consistently failed to acknowledge that individuals who want to leave the organisation of Jehovah's Witnesses, no longer be an active member, can do that by conflating someone choosing to no longer be an active member and someone specifically disassociating themselves, saying, I just don't agree with the organisation anymore, I don't want to be a part of it, are two totally separate things. And again, with respect, we just make the point
that was inherent in what I just put to you, but the consequence of dissociation, as we understand it, is that person will be shunned, and that means they lose contact with family, friends and everyone else who remains inside the Jehovah's Witness organisation. Is that right?
Again, Your Honour, the person...
Your colleague is nodding. Is that right or not?
Well, because you've said disassociated, Your Honour, but he or she can choose to be no longer an active member of the congregation.
I understand that, but if they are so unable to cope with what's happened and the way they've been treated inside the organisation, that they dissociate, then they lose all of their previous social structure. Is that right?
That could be the case, and we respect their right to make that decision.
Well, it's a pretty cruel way of dealing with someone, isn't it, who has suffered sexual abuse.
I could only repeat what I've said, Your Honour.
I know, but it's cruel, isn't it? To take away, by reason of the rules that you impose, all of their social structure. That's cruel.
Could I just interrupt, Your Honour? I believe with the difference between disfellowshipping and disassociation, the congregation takes the action in disfellowshipping somebody who is then shunned. Person who disassociates themselves, they're taking the action. Now, for whatever reason, I agree, not even with regards to being a victim, others make the same decision. But they are actually taking the stand to shun the congregation from themselves. And they understand the implications of that.
Now, I just want to make a statement there. I don't believe that if you leave a church organisation or a cult organisation, as in this case, that you're necessarily going to shun the people in the congregation. Now, this is the mentality of the hierarchy of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, or the Christian congregations, or otherwise known as the Jehovah Witnesses. If you do not want to attend their meetings, the mentality is you are shunning the congregation, and that is not so. How can you shun the congregation if you want to still be a part of the family members that are still in it, or the friends that are still in it? That's when we see who's actually shunning. Just because you left doesn't mean you want to shun the people that you know and your all the friends in there and your family members, but they, by goodness me, they will shun you. So this is all contradictory, really.
Now, it is, I agree. It puts them in a difficult situation, but it is a choice.
You see, someone who comes to you and says, I was sexually abused, but because there's no two witnesses, you don't accept it. You don't make that finding. They're left in a very difficult position, aren't they?
If they choose not to report it to the authorities, then...
For whatever reason, if the organisation doesn't acknowledge that they were abused, that imposes a great burden on them, doesn't it?
If I could again respectfully say, Your Honour, we don't disbelieve a person who makes an accusation. That's why we investigate every accusation brought forth by the elders.
Yes, but if there's not two witnesses, you don't accept it, do you?
Because scripturally we're not able to.
I know. And that, you would understand, can be very, very distressing for someone who has come to you with that complaint, can't it?
Certainly. Not being a victim is very distressing. Whatever consequences come, yeah, we agree.
And that can lead to a chain of circumstances where that person feels unable to do other than dissociate from your organisation.
Could I respectfully, Your Honour, say we don't want to be defensive, and we acknowledge that disassociation or disfellowshipping certainly have implications. An individual can choose to be inactive. Could I use very briefly a parallel that in my careful reading of the issue papers from the Commission, and some of it I don't understand, most of it I have. It's been very well put together, and the summaries. One reference said that only reporting is low across the community. One study that's not suggesting the Commission validated it, but it was just referenced. One study in this country suggested that only 10% of child abuse allegations, and I believe it was in New South Wales, but I'll be corrected on that, lead to a conviction.
Well, let's change that. Let's change that across the world. Let's start getting to the solicitors. Let's start getting to the lawyers. Let's start reporting these people who have interfered with your life or somebody's life that you know. Let's turn this around, what Mr. Finks just said, and let's bring the people in that have been harmed by these church organisations in whatever way, even theological abuse. And let's bring them to law. Because look at these two men. They're just sitting there arguing the toss with the people that are trying to help the victims of church organisations and other organisations, sexual abuse and other forms of abuse.
And only around half of those lead to a custodial sentence. I mention that simply to say that if on an occasion a victim of child abuse has felt that where Jehovah's Witnesses have taken a Bible-based stand, my heart also goes out to the thousands.
Now, I just want to say a Bible-based stand. Their Bible-based stand on the two-witness rule and shunning is not and cannot be legitimised by the New Testament. Well, you'll say, well, Jesus said that you have to have two or three. Jesus was still alive. The New Testament hadn't been cut. He hadn't died on the cross, and he was speaking to people that were under the old covenant. Jesus said to forgive, didn't he? He said to forgive and forgive and forgive and forgive. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to have the people on your doorstep, but you do have to forgive, and shunning is not a form of forgiveness, because when you watch the Jehovah Witness videos on shunning from jw.org or whoever it is that organises these things, the governing body or whatever, they encourage people to completely, totally ignore the person that's outside the organisation to the point where they may well not even exist.
Of victims who've come forward and asked for help. It's not resulted in a conviction, or if it has, only half of those result in a custodial sentence. So I just put it in the context that we are extremely aware of the damage that is done, where the victim, it's compounded by the action that we, the police or the courts take, and in that context we absolutely agree with you.
I understand what you say, but can I just ask you this simple question? Why is it necessary when someone feels that they can no longer abide the organisation and has to dissociate, why is it necessary to shun them? Why can't they keep having social contact with those people who happen to remain in the organisation?
Well, I'd say again, and we're going to appear very repetitive, I apologise, Your Honour, but the individual can choose.
Why is it necessary for the organisation to tell all of its adherents, you must shun that person?
Because the individual has not taken the decision to no longer associate or to no longer be involved with congregation activities, which is their right. They've taken the decision to say, I'm shunning the congregation, I'm no longer a part of the congregation, I put it in writing. So the individual takes that action, and we understand the implications. When someone is disfellowshipped, the congregation takes that action. So the individual does not need to put themselves in a position where they're shunned. They can walk away, they can go to another congregation. That's their personal choice. But we understand and agree with the point you're making, Your Honour.
This guy is a genius. I'll just go back to this Rodney Sphinx, is a genius mastermind of twisting facts and avoiding the reality of what the truth of the matter is. And the truth of the matter is, if somebody decides they don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, everybody they know in that organisation, everybody they have mixed within that organisation, even their family members, if it's their mother or father, they will be shunned. There's no question about it. Now, I'll put the link to this below. There's still another 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm sure you'll enjoy watching it, and we'll go back now to the weekly study.
With just one lie, Satan was able to convince man to disobey Jehovah God and alienate the rest of mankind from him. And it didn't end with that little fire he started a long time ago. That fire continues down to our day. Revelation 12:9 tells us the great dragon, the original serpent, the one called devil and Satan, is misleading the entire inhabited earth.
Well, he's trying to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is. Even though he's trying to, that doesn't mean that he absolutely is. Okay? This is religious fanaticism at its best. And I just want you to know that there are so many wonderful organizations in this world that help humanity beyond the comprehension of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They've got no comprehension of the organizations that help people to live and survive. You don't see the Jehovah's Witnesses going out to rescue a sinking ship. You don't see the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower Bible and Tract Society setting up retirement villages to try and help people, even though some of the retirement villages need some fixing up also. You don't see the Jehovah's Witnesses doing charity work. I've never seen it. You don't see the Jehovah's Witnesses with food banks. They don't offer food to the poor. They don't house the poor. There's none of the stuff. They just don't do it. But there are millions of organizations out there that are helping this world in a humane Christian way. And for this man or this organization to say that the whole world's under the influence of Satan, What about the ambulance drivers? What about the fire engines? What about the police? This organisation, and this is why Russia and other countries have banned it, is a fanatical, what could I say? I would liken it to a passive form of Muslim. The way they use their words is in theology is no different to a Muslim running into a mosque and blowing the mosque to bits. But they're doing it in a theologically abusive form. Not many people understand the destructiveness of theological abuse, because nobody seems to know what theological abuse is. Theological abuse in these church and cult organisations is what all